M. The Media Project. The Vermont Technology Alliance. The VTTA is the only statewide organization focused on Vermont's tech business sector and entrepreneurs. Our business members are Fortune 500 companies, startup founders, small business owners, and soloists. We provide advocacy, recruiting of tech talent, events, and other networking opportunities. We are the heart of the tech ecosystem in Vermont. Become a member now at vtta.org. The Vermont Technology Alliance. Tech thrives here.
Welcome to the Innovato2 podcast with your Innovato2 host, Scott Graves. Hey, Scott.
Howdy.
And Will Jeffries.
Hey, Ryan. Good to see you.
You too. And we've got a special guest today, one of our beloved Vermont founders, Meagan Downey with Shiki Wraps. How you doing, Meagan?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I understand that you and Will connected recently and kind of kicked off this conversation. So, Will, tell us how you bumped into Meagan.
Sure. So Meagan, it was actually a mutual connection of ours, most recently anyways, John Kingston, and I was having lunch with John, and then Meagan happened to walk by at the spot in Hula, had a quick introduction then, and then a conversation later. But I had actually seen Meagan's pitch for her startup back in 2022?
2021.
At Launch VT. And so unknowingly, we had circled back around. But what I'm really fascinated to hear about is a new approach to funding, early stage funding and financing that Meagan and two other startups are banding together to build in this state of Vermont. So I'd love to hand this over to Meagan. And maybe if you'd like to start by telling us a little bit about your startup background and then bring us back up to the present and tell our audience a little more.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So just to back up just this little bit about me is before I became the reusable gift wrap lady, I had spent my entire career in philanthropy, facilitating meaningful gifts between donors and nonprofits, working on really important issues like preventing homelessness and working on reproductive rights. I then became a consultant and advised other nonprofits on how to raise funds for their mission-driven organizations. And this gift wrap issue, the incredible amount of waste that is created, often microplastic-covered waste created by gift wrap, much of it is not recyclable, that sits in landfills, emitting carbon emissions. It's just like, I looked at this and I said, we can solve this. Like we can solve this problem. This is not as complicated as homelessness or protecting reproductive rights. And by the way, we can create wealth while we do it, and a company that is a 1% for the planet member and other things we can talk about in terms of, Shiki Wrap and the vision for Shiki Wrap. So I was a startup founder, like you said, Will, started out, was fortunate to be a part of Generator's Jumpstart program, then got into Launch VT, did Mass Challenge, the Entrepreneur Forum. Okay. Had the opportunity to participate in Launch VT, Mass Challenge, the Entrepreneur Forum, other accelerators to try to figure out not just, what my product line would be, but really how do I build a scalable business. And like all founders do, set out to raise capital, right? Because this was not a hobby. This was something, the lowest number you'll find is it's a $15 billion market. Other numbers are size $28 billion market and growing. And 45% of the growth in the market is projected to be sustainable alternatives to the single-use paper gift wrap. And if you think about what the reusable water bottle once was, like a niche outdoor item that not many people used before it became this ubiquitous thing that everybody fell over, that's where gift wrap is headed in my mind. And guess what? Found it challenging to raise capital as a sole female founder. I do have a team and I've got great advisors, thankfully, but I am the sole founder. I don't have a co-founder. Also raising for a product that many of the prospective investors are not the target market for, right? Many of the folks I was talking to were not the people that were purchasing the gift wrap in the home, or necessarily feeling this problem that needed to be solved, and that pain point. And also just, when it comes to consumer, it's just really hard. This is right, after the bubble, right, everywhere. And while in Vermont, we've got some really smart people, especially in the world of beverage, given the, incredible beverage brands that have been built here. And obviously tech, it was really challenging for me to, find my people when it came to people who understood what my vision was for this business. So I was able to raise a bit of capital from my wonderful advisors and others. But I wasn't able to raise the amount that I had envisioned for the pre-seed round. And as you can imagine, somebody who had been an expert in fundraising prior to this was a hit, right, to my ego.
It's really true. Every new business is an entirely new experience. And it's like sometimes when you're talking to people who might have even given you money several times in the past, not just once, but several times in the past, you suddenly look at you entirely differently with a different business model or product, right?
Totally. And I approached it the same way I would for philanthropy, not thinking that the incentive structure is different, the way you conduct a meeting is different, the whole thing is different. So I just had to learn the hard way.
I'm interested just for a second in the business model of Shiki Wrap, and that is to say, when you actually watch the way cash flows in and out of the business, is it a lot of businesses, it's actually surprising how the business really makes money. So in other words, it's not just a straight up transaction with a final product, but the business might make more money, especially in this realm where you can actually make more money on tipping fees for having taken in waste, or you've made it more in some other, a part of the formula of recycling, the processing of recycling. Were there surprises like that? And if there were, was it hard to express that to your prospective investors? Was that a challenge?
I would say there haven't been surprises in terms of the revenue generation, like what's going to generate revenue is going to be a product that delights customers, solves their problem, is easy to understand and use, right? But there have been surprises in figuring out that product market fit for sure. So I'll give it one example. This is pretty basic, but solid colors I always thought was pretty boring and sort of like the sawdust, wood dust in the Parmesan cheese, right? Like I put it in the collections just so the margins made sense, but I was like, even I felt bad kind of selling the solid colors. Turns out customers love solid colors. And when Kourtney Kardashian's people called and they could select from any SKU I had, they selected a solid. And I learned, I used to say at the launch VT pitch, I would have said our differentiator was the stretch or the design or the this or the that. Our differentiator is that we are obsessed with our customers. It's not about getting, Meagan's designs into the world. It's about what do customers want and what's going to stay out of a landfill and drive that shift to reuse in this market.
That's a real fundamental of retail that completely gets overlooked too often. Like we typically overthink retail, which is very, very simply like, what does the crowd want? And are you willing to give it to them?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really good way to put it. Getting obsessed with your customer. I think a similar way that I've heard it is fall in love with the problem. Don't fall in love
Not
with
the
the
solution.
brilliant solution that you think you have, but fall in love with the problem. So get obsessed with your customer. I really like that.
Yeah. And yeah, go
I
ahead.
imagine you've got some insights from that too, as far as, right? Like if they're going to reuse gift wrap and it's all Christmas print, well, they're going to have to wait a whole year to reuse that, right?
Right. So, yes, I mean, so now we've got more designs and fortunately, you'll hear, I have raised additional capital now. So we've got more inventory coming out that's more all occasions. So birthdays, graduations, anniversaries. But I will say just on that point about being customer obsessed, because this is such a strong product founder fit, right? I definitely made the mistake of going to market with what should have been my second product first. So the wraps are great. Like I've got customers, it's great. Should have been my second product. The first is bags. Like if you think about it, a bag is way easier to understand than how to use a reusable gift wrap. And so one of the milestones for our current capital raise is about getting our bags on retail shelves. And we have a couple of, a beachhead market also defined. And we're in conversations with some folks in specific geographies to really focus the traction, get the network effects, make sure we're seeing velocity on the shelf before going to some of those larger retailers. That, of course, that's the ultimate goal, right?
I wouldn't have thought of it, but you said bags, and now I'm thinking like warehouse. We got that box that sits, or the Tupperware container that sits in the basement. This Christmas we opened it up. We used a bag in it that literally had a tag from my wife and I's first Christmas.
Wow.
21 years ago. Like, well, like, wait a minute, how did this bag end up staying in the bottom of this thing? I mean, but yeah, right. I mean, like people have been doing that for at least 20 years now or so, you know what I mean? Where they're using the bags and there it is, right? Like recycle the bags, right?
Yeah. And our bags are going to read much more easily on the shelf as a more durable, sustainable alternative than the paper ones. That I'm glad you're reusing your bags, although even those look bad after like 3 or 4 uses. They start.
And the point is, the better product is the one that it's in how it's made, not just in the fact that you're keeping it out of the landfill for a period of time, hopefully forever, but at least a long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go.
Oh, no. You're the guest. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we are a mission-driven business, as you can hear. This is really what drives me as a founder. But I know that things like design, by that I mean, the patterns, the artists that we work with, it all needs to come together in order for us to reach our mission, realize our mission. But that's our main goal, which is what led me to learn about alternative forms of financing for impact startups and mission-driven startups, which was exciting.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily that these businesses don't have, I find this all the time where, I'll give you a direct example. I have their entity set up as a nonprofit, and they're in the real estate segment. They figure they could probably do $50-60 million a year in gross revenue. And they've been told by multiple accelerators, that just doesn't scale in your industry. It's too small, right? So, and I look at that and I go, we've been saying for a long time, both inside and outside of tech, but certainly all within any sort of industry that can quote unquote scale. We keep focusing on unicorns, and we're giving up on a lot of people. A lot of people just aren't getting the attention they deserve to just build. What about the thousands of people that want to build one of those medium-sized businesses that, when I hear 50-60 million, I'm thinking it's a pretty sustainable business if it's recurring year upon year and you can employ people and, I mean, so is this a bit of the segment that you're targeting or do you have any thoughts just on the missing, we have the missing middle in housing. We have the missing middle in so much of the economy. We have a missing middle in funding startups too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to the reusable water bottle analogy just because we can look back at what happened there, right? With the drive to reuse. And you look at a brand like Swell. The analogy I'm going to use is again going back to the reusable water bottle market, because we can really look back and see what happened there with the growth of that market when most people were using single-use plastic. And if you look at the brand Swell, their reusable water bottles are $40. And a lot of people would say, well, why would somebody spend $40 on a water bottle when I can keep getting my 50-cent, single-use plastic from the gas station? She built a brand, Sarah, and I've been in touch with that founder. She's wonderful. We've talked multiple times. She built that brand, God, to a $100 million exit, this is a nice exit. This is not a small company.
We should all be so lucky to have such a small business.
Indeed.
Right. And if you're talking about moat, what's your moat? Well, again, look at reusable water bottles. Swell is not the only brand of reusable water bottle, because it's a huge market. So you just need to, if you're going to win in such a huge market, you've got to understand what differentiates you, understand what your competitors are doing, and how to just keep delighting your customers so they come back to you.
Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
So there's a lot of education that goes into some of these products in terms of the brand kind of educates the consumer base, and then you learn from the consumer base what they really want in that process, that iteration. Do you feel like you're sort of doing the same thing with the fundraising at this point?
It's gotten easier, I would say, over time. So this is a trend. So there are people that understand what this is, and it's just more been my journey of figuring out it's not about going to the same kind of power players that we all know, right? It's about finding my people that are power players too, but they might not be in this geography. And, listening to Doug Merrill on your show, just like he talked about, sometimes companies here in Vermont can do really great at pre-seed, but when they need to raise those larger rounds, if they haven't built their network, it's really challenging. So, I'm fortunate that I do have some investors from Vermont, but I also have investors representing both coasts, and I'm focused more now on those coasts really than I am here, with the exception of a new fund that we'll talk about that I'm launching here in Vermont.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and part of that's about collaboration too, right? It's some of those founders don't have that network yet. Other founders have, done a startup before and kind of have started to build that network. And so, how are you bringing that ecosystem together?
I think I have so much to owe to my wonderful advisors, including John Kingston, who Will mentioned. I have a group of incredible advisors, including one who I've just recruited in New York City, there's just been really, really great things happening because of her passion for what we're building. And that's what you have to do as a founder, right? You've got to build community. It's your team, yes, people that you can pay, but also the people that are going to share your vision. And I've been fortunate to find those folks.
That's awesome. So I know we want to bring other folks from the fund on to chat in the future, but give us a quick preview of what you're doing with this funding model and how you see it making a difference.
Sure. Well, again, given my background in philanthropy, I had learned that it is possible for impact investors and philanthropists to unlock their philanthropic capital to invest in mission-driven startups like mine. But typically this is happening in larger funds, right? So it's not democratized so that Shiki Wrap can access that capital easily. Shiki Wrap would have to be, a portfolio company of a larger green fund, and there's different players in that space. But when I learned that I could partner with an administrator in New York City, who I met with and had multiple conversations with, and tested out initially, took in some investment. So the way it works is for the initial investment I took in, it was through philanthropic dollars, through a donor advised fund, which is just one charitable giving vehicle, but it's a very popular charitable giving vehicle. And it's also one where hundreds of billions of dollars just sit in donor advised funds every year without being deployed for capital. You may have heard the hashtag #HalfMyDAF movement. Like, there's been a movement in philanthropy to try to unlock this capital. So this investor had money sitting in his DAS, transferred it on a safe note. So he invested at the same terms that I'm accepting investment at, with the discount and a cap on a safe note. And when Shiki Wrap has a big exit, that upside is going to go to grow his philanthropic pool rather than just go back into his pocket. I'm also talking with another prospective investor who's planning on making a contribution because he's expecting a liquidity event. He's going to be selling some real estate. So he's planning to put money into the DAF and transfer it over. And so I initially just did that as a test before talking about launching a fund or getting other founders involved. And it just went so seamlessly. And I was able to set up my own funds that could help other founders in this way. And I happen to know mission-driven founders here that, and I didn't say they struggle to raise capital, but it's always a challenge to figure out, how you want to raise capital. And started talking with them, and they were very excited about the possibility of raising funds in this way. And so that's what we're doing. So the fund is called Compound Good, and Shiki Wrap is just one project supported by Compound Good. We have 2 other mission-driven businesses, but we hope to expand that. Right now, we're just starting with the 3 of us to make sure we figure it all out. But it can accept gifts of stock, outright cash, donor advised fund money. We can do recoverable grants. I mean, just any form of philanthropic funding that you can imagine, we're able to accept.
Here's what I love about this, and that is you are recognizing the simple elegance of how cash is flowing in and out of organizations, and you're at the same time, and you're bringing that to bear for the benefit of the organization or the fund that you've created, while at the same time you're using existing either banking or contractual mechanisms already in place, right? So when we think about, a lot on this show, we talk about the I come from the record business, so I use naughty words. I keep saying, the unsexy stuff. Nobody wants to talk about financial models for innovation because everyone's got a thing, ooh, this is my innovation, right? So we got to talk about the financial models because most businesses fail at that point. And when we think about financial innovation, what gets us in trouble is when we want to do something that's going to take 30 years to get bank regulators to approve, right? Like that. Like, we're all going to be dead by the time this happens, right? But you have said, hey, in everything you just described, like, you use existing vehicles, existing contractual agreements, and you just recognize that, hey, you can park this money in a bunch of different ways. During one of its life cycles, it should be parked here to the benefit of these businesses. And that's, frankly, it's genius because it's Mozart. It's simple. You know what I'm saying? And it works.
Yes. What I love about it is you've removed, at least in the case of a donor advised fund, you've removed the friction of the person having to write a check.
Yeah.
They already wrote the check. They already took the tax benefit. It's just a matter of, hey, did you know, instead of sitting there in your Fidelity or Schwab, supporting their investments, did you know it could do this? And I was able to quickly get over the little bits of guilt I initially had about, would I be taking this money from, the homeless shelter down the road that could be getting. The bottom line is, no, all I'm doing is I'm unlocking it, generating more, an actual return to help to grow the overall philanthropic pool, which in the U.S. has remained stuck at 2% of GDP ever since philanthropy has been recorded in the early 1970s. So this would be a nice way to, have impact in a number of ways.
Do you think
unlocking funds that are not being deployed, and you're doing it in a way that's innovative without actually breaking the system? You're just removing a barrier between two things that already exist.
Right on, Will. And another great thing about this is, to your point, Meagan, those philanthropic numbers have been the same for a half century. In essence, this is a better investment because the money is being utilized, right, to generate a greater return. Do you think because in so doing, it's kind of breaking through the mold of which so many nonprofits are in, which is, every day we're reinventing ourselves, right? It's like it's kind of like owning a failing music store. I sold a guitar yesterday. Boy, if I don't sell a guitar today, I'm in trouble. Maybe this is too grandiose, but maybe you can change the culture over time of donors too, who are like, people sit on boards, and I've had this experience being a nonprofit executive director of, we don't want to get too much money in because a lot of people give us money because we're constantly poor. And it's like, actually, no, they give money to organizations that are well run and well capitalized. People back winning horses, whether it's a nonprofit or not. You know what I mean? If more money needs to go to homelessness in Vermont, as an example, which it does, it's either a question of organizations need to be better about the way they're dispensing with money, or it's about allocation.
Yeah.
It's about getting people convinced that there's a problem. And that's different, two different things.
Nonprofit is a tax status, not a business strategy. And I have great admiration for the nonprofits that I've worked with over the years. And guess what? I hope to generate a bunch of wealth and become philanthropic myself.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to, there's a lot of good work happening in the world, but you're right. And I actually could write a book on some of the issues with the nonprofit ecosystem.
There's a mentality that is evolved on both the side of donors and leadership. It's first of all, it's not good business fundamentals, but it's also almost to the point I want to say of being caustic. You know what I mean? In certain segments, I'm in the real estate development area, and nonprofit development and for-profit development are in the environment we're currently in. With federal dollars, as an example, it's turning really nasty out on the street. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
And like this is just like totally not the right culture,
I feel for those folks. Yeah, it's rough out there.
Yeah, this is exciting in that it actually brings those dollars closer to that philanthropic mission, right? I mean, those dollars going through companies that are doing what you're doing, right? You're 1% for the planet. The profits that you're generating are going back into donor advised funds, which means they have more capital, which means they have more requirement to donate to continue operating those funds. And not to mention, if they're involved in organizations like yours and others in this group, they're also tuning into the real world as opposed to whatever Fidelity and Schwab had them investing in. Their investments are getting them tuned in. They're paying attention to where their investment is a lot more. They're watching the progress of the company. They're looking at the impact that the company can have and potentially being exposed to other needs, not just investments, but philanthropic needs that they can have an impact with. So it's really exciting to see that narrative unfolding.
Thanks. And I'm genuinely excited about the mission of the fund beyond, of course, I want Shiki Wrap to get funded, but also beyond Shiki Wrap, because I feel that this notion of, regardless of your political beliefs or whatever, I mean, a lot of people feel like there are some big problems that need to be solved, and they're complicated problems and that require alternative forms of energy, or things that are years in the horizon before we're actually going to get to a solution. What I love about the mission of this fund is that it's very straightforward. All of the founders that are running the startups that will benefit from it, our products and services, they are putting good into the world every day, like right away. They're having a positive benefit. And so, and each of us have our own, theories of change and everything around that. But I think we could use some of that right now. Just like, where can we just do some good today?
Absolutely. Well, so that's probably a good space for us to leave it off. Just to really put it out there, where can they do some good today? Where can they find information about the fund and learn about you and the other companies in the fund today?
So our website is going to be launched soon. Right now, it's still under password protection while we add to it. It will be at compoundgood.org. But in the short term, if people want to learn more about it, they're welcome to email me at Meagan, MEAGAN, at shikiwrap.com, which is SHIKIWRAP.com.
Excellent. And we'll put that in the show notes too. So really appreciate you being here. Look forward to bringing the cohort together for Compound Good to talk more to you as a group. And thank you so much for sharing the work you're doing and for doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Find Innovato2 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to Interchain Live on YouTube for video podcasts. Innovato2 is a collaboration of Interchain Live and M the Media Project.